Hi, and welcome to the Peak Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, John Perry from Steel Peak Wealth Management. Today, I have the pleasure of having Tammy Leone from Crown Mortgage Services with me. Tammy and I have been friends for a number of years. I've worked with her, myself, with mortgages, and I wanted to have her here to talk a little bit about what's going on with mortgages and interest rates and a couple of other insights about what to do when you're going to go and buy a house and get a mortgage. But first, Tammy, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Crown Mortgage.
Okay, so thanks for having me here, by the way. I'm so excited to be sitting next to you right now. It's it's a dream of mine that's come true.
Oh, well, same here.
So I'm Tammy Leone. I am the owner and founder of Crown Mortgage Services. And I've been in business for 31 years as a woman-owned business. I started the company when I was about 10. So,
Whoa.
Yeah. In case anybody was saying, oh my God, but
So like selling lemonade and mortgages.
Totally. In case anybody's like, oh my God, she looks so young for somebody who's been in business 31 years. So I love it. I've been in the industry a long time, and I work with my husband for the past 25 years, which could be challenging.
Sure.
But I'm going to go ahead and
We could do another podcast about working with family or spouses. Absolutely.
That's a whole nother.
I worked with my dad for 25 years before he passed away, and I get it. I get it.
I always say that I don't know, is today going to be the last day for it's like,
for the business and for
exactly.
us?
It's going to be like War of the Roses scene, so that's about it. I used to work on Wall Street. I worked at Oppenheimer on the trading floor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for years.
Which is funny because I worked for Oppenheimer, it sounds funny, not related, but the mutual fund company. Mm-hmm. And I actually worked in Two World Trade for a couple of years. So
I was in One World.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right next door.
Right next door. So
yes.
I worked there for years. It was a great job. Loved it. And
you guys were in the Northeast for a long time.
Yes.
And then tell us a little about that. You came down to this market. What brought you down here?
To the Florida market?
Yeah.
So we have been coming here for, 25, 30 years. We have property here and really just came sort of, on vacation, do some work down here, meet with some clients. But primarily we're from Jersey and we would do business in New Jersey.
You're from Jersey?
We're from Jersey.
I'm from Jersey.
Jersey in the house. And when my daughter graduated high school, my husband was like, well, I want to move to Florida full time, so either you're coming or you're not.
Right. Well, we can call him by his name, too. His name is Mike.
Mike. So I'm like, oh, well, how can a woman refuse that offer?
Right.
So, so we basically just sold our property in New Jersey. We still maintain another property there. And we came here and moved the office and everything full time. So we're here full time going on 3 years.
And obviously you enjoy being down here and the lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hot for me, but you know what I mean? It's like I'm always a puddle of water. But
right, it's a little hot for everybody, especially lately.
Exactly.
In May.
Exactly.
Let's talk about real quick how you see things going right now, because obviously one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about mortgages and the real estate market, obviously they're very related, is that's part of somebody's overall financial picture. Mm-hmm. And whether it's being a first-time buyer or someone buying and selling, or selling and buying, or buying an investment property, it is an intricate part of people's assets, especially as you get older. And the role you play, and your company plays, in that process is critical, because people go out and it's an interesting just overall picture when you look at it, because people go out and they start looking at homes and they might have a general sense of what they want to spend on a property or a house or an apartment. And then they kind of do the other things later on. Let's look at the different kinds of mortgages out there, where are interest rates, and you look at what's just happened over the past, let's call it 2 years, 2 to 3 years coming out of the pandemic with inflation and interest rates. And it's changed the entire complexity of not just how much mortgages cost people payments wise, but what people can afford. And how have you seen things change over, let's say, the last 24 months?
That was a lot of questions, John.
Let's just start with the last one. Let's just start with the last one.
We'll go with the last one.
I can be verbose.
Exactly. So, I mean, obviously, market conditions, and when I speak to people, I tell them, listen, when I started in the company, and a lot of people in the business, a lot of people say the same thing. The rates were very high. They could have been, 13, 14, 15%, during my career. But the housing was very low. Right. So you hear people say that all the time. Sure, my rate was 14, 15%, but I bought my house for 80 grand. And in the past 24 months, really going on 36 months at this point, the housing has just been increasing dramatically. So with the increase in rates and increase in housing, dramatically rising.
The prices.
Yeah, the prices. It's gotten to a point where, there's a lot of certain area of the population where, even if they're making sometimes a couple $100,000 a year, they're getting outbid, or
they're getting priced out.
They're getting priced out of the market.
Right.
And that's just not a normal market. So I personally don't like to exist in this market, because I think that it's just not good for anybody. It's not good for people in the industry. It's not good for people buying. It's not good for people who are selling, because then they also need to buy. And it's sort of just like the dog, chasing the tail of when is it going to just become normal.
Right.
People have been forced to rent, and then of course, the rental prices go up. So everything has this dramatic effect to it as the rates were going up, and then the house prices were going up, and everybody was sort of running for their lives to get a property and overbidding and so on and so forth.
Right.
The other thing that's a little bit dramatic is that, we're licensed in Florida, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, and the differences now between the markets is pretty incredible. So
give us a little context on that.
Yeah. So in Florida, it's a little bit. It's been a little bit, I would say, flatter or quiet after the pandemic. Everybody came running down here, and they were like, "Oh my God, we need to be outside. We want to move to Florida." So obviously, the prices here just started to skyrocket. The rents skyrocketed, and that seems to be maybe tapering off a little bit. Even though Florida's a big state, right? So different markets, it's hyper local.
And we've always had our draw here. I've been down here for over 20 years now, and even before the pandemic, which pulled a lot of business down here, even more so, and pushed up prices.
Right.
You always had that draw. In the past, I think typically, almost stereotypically, people would say it was a retirement place.
Right. Right.
But that's changed.
Yes, that's absolutely changed, and definitely there's more people moving from different, parts of the country, and families are moving in, and young professionals are moving in, and I think each market has a little bit of a different flair to it. Tampa is a very big young professional market. Miami or
Brickell,
right? Yeah, it's a little bit more a corporate market. A lot of the big firms have moved down here, so there are a lot of moving parts. But in Florida, you have also the insurance problem. So insurance is a problem here. And if you're in the New Jersey market, let's say, to be honest, I mean, there's still people outbidding each other. There's maybe 10 or 15 offers on every property up in New Jersey, right?
I had somebody I know a friend who sold their home literally in a day, cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's still going on.
Right.
Yeah, that's still going on, and people are getting outbid, and they're still bidding 50 and 100 or 150 over ask, and not getting it. So the markets in each area, they really have their own thing going on.
Sure. And I'm sure that goes, like you said, for Florida as well, when you have the different areas. Certainly this is more family oriented here in Boca, and even some retirement aspects to it. But then even you go the further south you go, you're going to have more young professionals in, say, even the Fort Lauderdale area.
Right.
And then outside of that, you might have young couples like in the Plantation area and things. And then you go further down, like we were saying with Brickell. But surrounding that, Florida's always going to have that demographic of the retiree.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, currently, obviously, mortgage rates have come down a little bit from where they peaked, but they're still elevated.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, like how the behavior of the mortgage rates has been, and do you and Mike have any kind of forecast for where you think things are going to stay the same, or potentially buyers will get a break somewhere down the line?
No, we feel that, going through a lot of market cycles, that we actually thought, to be honest, that the break would have come already. But obviously that hasn't been really the case. There's a lot of data out there, and sometimes it's very noisy, right? And everybody sometimes thinks that the Fed directly is in correlation to the mortgage market.
Right.
And the Fed decisions and the things that they do based on the data that's coming in, which is sort of like a lagging data, right? It's sort of behind.
Right.
And by the time they sort of get to it, chew on it, the damage is already done.
Right. And by
right?
Fed, Tammy is referring to the Federal Reserve,
right.
who controls interest rates.
Right.
And we hear them talked about on the business programs on CNBC and Bloomberg all the time about the next Fed meeting, and are they going to lower rates? Are they going to stay the same? What is Powell, who runs the Fed, who's in charge of the Fed right now, what is he going to say when he speaks about it after the meeting? So, and I think that you're right. I think a lot of people generally think that they're 100% correlated.
Right, which they're not.
Right.
Right.
I mean, they somewhat track each other.
Yeah,
but it's not one for one.
No,
it's not
no,
100%.
No, not for long-term mortgage rates. Short-term, your HELOC loans, your car loans, your credit card loans, personal loans. That's a direct correlation. So sort of every time that they speak and scare the bejesus out of everyone,
Now,
the rates change on those short-term lending.
People are, I think, when they think about mortgages, they think about, okay, typically there's 30-year fixed, 15-year fixed, and then you have a smattering of ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages. And what does that probably make up? 15% of the overall mortgage ARMs, probably?
Yeah, there's times during market cycles that the ARMs are the way to go. That hasn't really been the case as of late, because the ARMs and the 30-year fixed have sort of been in line.
So there's no benefit to...
Yeah, there's real...
Right.
There really
so
wasn't
you're really seeing with rates the way they are right now, most people are gravitating towards that traditional 30-year fix.
Yeah, and in the past, we would see... 10 year, because you could do a 10 year,
Sure.
15, 20. But as rates have,
elevated, stayed elevated.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, people have been sticking with the 30 because it has to be tolerable, right? Because
well, you go 15,
right.
Now you're going to have a much higher
right, exactly,
monthly
and
cost.
everybody has a life.
Right.
You have car payments, and you have school payments and college payments, and you have to live, and you have to pay for utilities, and there has to be some fun left.
Talk to me a little bit, because I'm interested in you telling the listeners about you guys run a program that's a little different than what people are traditionally used to. I think you keys for cash or cash.
Yeah. So they have programs out there that basically, if you have, we're a broker, so we're able to deal with different lenders and different investors who have an appetite for different types of loans and loan programs, depending on the person's credit. Are we doing a full doc? Are we doing a no doc? Is it down payment assistant money? So there's a lot of programs out there, but normally for us, the best thing for us to do is that when we're sitting down with somebody, we're going to fully analyze their situation and then basically come up with some viable options for them to let them know that this is probably the better way for you to do it, or this is the program that you should probably go with, because that's going to give you the best terms.
Right.
So,
and that goes back to what I was saying earlier when we first started talking about how people kind of do it backwards.
Right.
Exactly. If you're going to go buy a house,
right.
People will go get a realtor,
right.
but they don't think about the financial aspect
right.
of it. And really, at least in my opinion, and I think Tammy would echo that, is that you have a team helping you. You might have a financial advisor like myself that's going to talk to you about your financial plan and what you can afford from that standpoint and what your assets look like. But you're going to want to obviously work with a realtor most of the time. And then you want to go to or get a referral for an accomplished professional mortgage person that's going to also sit down with you prior to you spending all that time pounding the pavement, looking at homes or condos
For nothing.
for nothing. So then you come back, and you're also going to go through the process of getting them maybe pre-qualified. So really, what you're looking at before you're and I think it was a little easier 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago when rates were so low.
Right.
Most people could go out and really just get a home and find the mortgage or the financing that fit what their needs were.
Right. And again, going back to the housing wasn't as expensive as it is now.
Right.
So
you have two
that
problems.
same house might have been $300,000 as opposed to being $700,000 or $800,000.
Right.
So, I mean, sure, if you have 2% interest or 3% interest and a $300,000 property, pretty much there's going to be, I don't know, whatever, 90% of the population is going to qualify for that. So, but once things started ticking up, it became a different beast.
Well, right. So now you have a problem on two fronts. Right. It's like a double-headed monster where you have interest rates that at least we haven't seen in a long time, and mortgage rates at a higher level than we've seen in a long time. And to go back to what Tammy said, when I moved to Florida in 2004, interest rates were higher than this. They were actually 8 to 10% mortgage rates.
Yeah.
And historically, they've been at this particular area or range or even higher. We just got spoiled, I think, with having so many years after the financial crisis where they were artificially suppressed, and I'm talking about interest rates and mortgage rates. So people really could go out and for all intents and purposes, buy more than they'd typically be able to afford.
Yeah, and the housing. I mean, housing is shocking. It's like, so if you even just go around your own neighborhood or neighborhoods that your friends live in, and you're like, my friends moved into that house for like whatever, 400,000 or 500,000,
Right.
and now they could get 9.
Oh yeah.
It's been 3 years. Right. So like, I mean, that's a pretty big increase on your investment, right? I mean,
and I know people that bought homes, pre-pandemic, and that locked in. I mean, it's insane. 2.5%, 2.75%,
right?
And rates that we'll probably never see again.
No, and that's why there's a combination of things why there's a housing shortage, right? So if we go back to the Jersey market, of course, there's 40 billion people who want to live in, a state that can't hold 40 billion people.
Sure.
But you have these clusters. You have clusters of where people want to go, where they want to be, hyperlocal, zip code sensitive. And
well, now throw in the fact that people are working remotely,
right?
And we haven't gone back to full on-site working in an office, which I don't think anybody really ever thought that as many
that would
years
last forever, right?
Right. Out of the pandemic, where now when I talk to my friends who are business owners or my clients that are business owners, and they're hiring people are coming in and they almost expect that they can work from home 1 or 2 days and sometimes a week and sometimes that it's a true hybrid model where they can work at home for weeks at a time, months at a time, go to a different state and, work from Colorado for however. So it really is a different environment, and all that plays into the real estate market as well.
Absolutely.
Because now you also have somebody here in Florida might get a job from a company in California and they don't have to move there.
Correct.
So you have less people potentially selling their homes and creating more inventory on the market.
Right. Or they don't want to move because they have a low interest rate.
And they'll never get it again.
And even if they're willing to not get it again, it's like selling's easy. They could sell. It's not a problem. But where are they going to go?
Right.
So.
Right. Oh, I mean, please, I'm sure you've heard the story tons of times down here where somebody can get a bag of money for their home, but they can't find a home.
No, they're going to pay a bag of money for the house that they buy.
Right, and they better be prepared to be staying there a long time. Otherwise, they're never going to get their money back out of it.
Correct. So it's a little bit, like I say, I don't like this market for anybody. And sure, it's great to sell houses and all that, but it's just not a sustainable market. I don't feel going forward. I don't think it's really good for anybody, not for people in the industry, not for the consumer.
Right. Oh, and look, people get priced out because if you look at what's going, I live in East Boca, and if you look at what's going on, say behind Meisner Park, in that back area, you have a lot of these older homes that have been there for decades. And they are getting now torn down. It's like every week there's another for sale sign, and a lot of these homes they have carports. They don't even have garages. That's how old they are.
Right.
And they're very small homes. Maybe they're 1,500 to 2,500 square feet, but they're on nice pieces of property, and they're getting torn down, and they're building $2+ million homes. So at one time you had affordable housing, so to speak, and now you've got a much more limited market for people who are going to be able to come in and buy those homes.
Absolutely.
So that also has an effect because you don't have a lot of people coming in and say, you know what I want to do? I want to buy a bunch of homes in this particular area and put up affordable housing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of contraction going on, right?
So you have a lot of things being bought and knocked down.
Right.
And even when you look at, again, in East Boca, you have a lot of new apartment complexes coming up. You don't have a lot of 2 bedrooms in these new buildings selling for $1,500, or renting for $1,500 a month. No. These 2 bedrooms are $3,500, $4,000, $4,500, $5,000, and again, that's a limited market.
Absolutely.
So it's very interesting how all of these different factors play a part. And even though when I talk to, and I want you to respond to this, when I talk to my friends that are, say, real estate attorneys, the number of transactions during the pandemic obviously were through the roof.
Right.
And even coming out of it, we're pretty busy. Now they're doing other things because that business has dried up.
Right.
Are you guys still busy? Has it slowed down at least to some degree?
For us, again, because we're licensed in different markets. We do business lending, we do cash out refinances, we do HELOC loans, we do purchase business. So
there's other aspects of that financing area that kind of make up for what's going on.
Absolutely. And, life is fluid, right? So that you have people getting divorced, you have people getting married, you have people who need to, maybe get a downsize or maybe upsize, or they need to do a lateral move. They need to get relocated from work to a different state. There's a lot going on when it comes to the mortgage end of the business.
Right.
So you may not have somebody who needs to sell, let's say, but maybe they want to buy a second home. Maybe they want to do renovations to their property and they need the cash. Maybe they want to pay off debt. Maybe they need to do a divorce buyout. So there's
that's a great thing to talk about or bring up because it's not just about I'm buying a home, whether it's a new home, a first home, or a secondary home or an investment property. This is other areas of financing within the umbrella of real estate.
Right, and I always speak about like smart money moves because. There's homeowners. We're all sitting on this unprecedented amount of equity in their homes, and sometimes you need to put the equity to work for you. Right. So it just really depends on what the person's need is. Right. But I did a segment the other day about, and I think we were going to touch on credit.
Yeah.
That when your credit card starts to get maxed out, and the credit line starts to sort of dry up, your credit scores take a hit.
Big time.
And it's really, really important that your credit scores don't take a hit. And we just discussed this. I think you wanted to tap in on this.
We're going to talk about this because
it's really important.
Credit health, and by credit health, I'm referring to what your credit scores are on the major credit agency platforms, and obviously that's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And it's different than it was 20 years ago or so, where people thought of their credit check for just a few things. Okay, what my credit score was for if I'm buying a car, I'm buying a home, or if I want to get credit cards.
Right.
And now everything is impacted, it seems, or a lot of things, by what your credit scores are. And that's if you're taking new car insurance, if you are moving or whatever, and you are setting up new utilities. I'm sure people who have started new jobs in the last 5 years or so know that new employers check credit as well, because it fills out the picture of who that new employee or potential new employee is. And Tammy and I were speaking about this because I think that's something that people don't pay enough attention to until it's too late.
Agreed.
And when you're coming to a situation like buying a new home or some major type of purchase, it's so important to be monitoring what your credit health is like. And to go back to what you were saying, people end up putting at times a lot on their credit cards, and that is called your credit utilization. Right. And if your credit utilization goes over, I believe it's 30%, it starts having a dramatic effect on your score. Yes. And Tammy and I, before we started recording today, were talking about this because I just went through identity theft, and it had a major impact on my own credit scores that I am still getting fixed. And again, your credit is a vital part of your overall financial health. And one of the things that I'm become now a big proponent of is signing up for a service like My FICO, which I know Tammy and Mike also sign up for. And it's almost overwhelming because 5 to 10 times a day you'll get an alert that your credit card went down, decreased $200 in your balance and or $1,000 or $500, and you're like, oh my God, do I have to get these now? Obviously, you can turn off alerts and just go and get the app and check it, but I think people have to understand how critical it is. Whether it's getting a mortgage. Or
just for your life in general.
Just for your life in general.
I mean, speaking about those notifications, I got one that said that I was on the dark web, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I've made it. I'm on the dark web. I'm like, is this a good thing?
I'm famous now.
Like,
I'm on
your information's on the dark web, and I'm like, oh my God, this is real.
Right. Ooh.
I'm like, is
but
that
then I go, oh, wait a second, that's not so good. I'm on the dark web.
Yeah, I don't know if that. I'm like, is this good or bad? But
right.
Yeah, to your point, it's like everything is affected by your credit, and sometimes it's really hard to repair it or to get to where you used to be. People say, well, I have a credit score. It was 780, but then
something happened,
and now it's 650, or 620. And there's differences in the credit score dramatically with how much of a down payment you need to put down on, what your rate's going to be, how much it's going to cost you to get that rate. Again, as we were talking about earlier, car insurance, health insurance,
employment,
renting. It's all, everything is monitored off of your credit. And if you have someone, because this happens all the time, who's trying to either get into an HOA, condo association.
This is important.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about this.
This is really important. Sometimes what will happen is, I'll hear these stories. We don't do this because we do a lot of due diligence up front. So if you're purchasing a condo or you're in an HOA community, we do due diligence up front to make sure that your score is going to be
qualify.
Yeah, we're not going to go
HOA.
through the whole process to find out, right before we clear to close, that you don't have the FICO score to live in that place that you're purchasing.
Right.
But it happens. So, but that's really important, because if you have a 670 FICO score and you need a 700 to live in that community, you need to know that, because you don't want to go through the whole process of trying to purchase in that community to find out they're not going to accept you, and they won't accept you, and they don't really make exceptions.
Right.
Seldomly do I ever see that they're going to make an exception for you and they didn't make an exception for someone else.
Right. They don't want to go down that road.
No.
And bottom line,
Pandora's box.
Bottom line, it's just one of those things that you either prepare for ahead of time and you include it in just monitoring your overall financial health,
Absolutely.
or you find out the hard way.
And yeah, and it's costly, and that's the other thing about I speak about cost of waiting. It's costly to find out later because you've already spent money on an appraisal and on a home inspection, and you have the movers coming, and you have all these things in play.
Or
And
what if you've sold your home?
yeah, you have a down payment going. I mean, and now you find out, well, what do you mean I needed to have a 700 FICO to live there?
Right. Because people will think of something like that and understand the dynamic. This is more germane to the Florida market maybe
Yes,
than
for sure.
other markets,
Yeah.
because you have a lot of country clubs down here that are run by a master HOA, if you want to call it that.
Right.
But then the subdivisions within have their own HOAs. And then you have condos, which obviously have one HOA, and they have become incredibly strict about
Correct.
who they take.
That's correct.
And again, for good or for bad, your credit score has become a reflection and something that all of these different situations, they look at the credit to help determine whether you're a candidate to either live somewhere, work somewhere, buy something, qualify for something. So again, kind of to wrap things up here, because we've talked about a lot of different things, this is all part of financial health, and this is why we're here, okay? To talk about things like monitoring your credit. And again, I can wholeheartedly myself recommend a service like MyFICO. And you want to work with somebody like Tammy and Mike, given the impact and how important when you're buying a home, selling a home, doing a refinancing, a cash out mortgage, any of these instances, that you want somebody who literally is going to partner with you and hold your hand through the whole process. Okay, because you don't want to find out the hard way or later on that you're in a pickle. Okay. Before we finish up here, Tammy, why don't you just tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want to talk to you or work with Crown Services?
Sure. So I'm super easy to get in touch with. I answer my phone. I answer my email. My cell number is 732-267-7896. That's my number, so you always speak to me. And I don't sort of outsource it or not pick up the phone.
I
when
can
somebody
vouch for
calls.
that.
Exactly.
I can vouch for that. Call Tammy, text Tammy.
Talk to Tammy.
That should be your
That
talk
is,
to
talk
Tammy.
to Tammy.
Talk to Tammy.
732-267-7896.
Yes, and I can vouch for that.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for your
thank
time
you.
today.
Yeah, I appreciate being
Tammy's
here.
one of my favorite people, and her and Mike are the utmost professionals.
Aw, thank you.
They go to the ends of the earth for their clients. They really, really do, and that's why they have such a good business both here and still up in the Northeast. So I really appreciate you taking part.
Thank you.
And
for the shout
again, if you want to tune in and hear some of our other episodes, we're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. And if you want to reach out to me, again, my name is John Perry. You can email me at john.perry@spwm.com. I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks again, Tammy.
Thank you.
And we will see you again soon.